I think that there's a big issue in terms of faster vehicles versus slower vehicles, and I think we can come up with some adaptive redesign. I think the avenues are a great opportunity to expand and try some new ways of creating bigger, wider lanes for people to safely move through the city.
Today is Bike to Work Day here in New York City. I'm out here with a whole bunch of groups represented. So I decided to take the opportunity to ask riders if we should be widening a few bike lanes here in New York City and where.
Some of the bridges, they really pile up with a lot of cyclists. On the Brooklyn Bridge, we have the two-way. We could use like a lane in each direction on each side of the bridge.
59th Street Bridge, that's where we need width. It's a disaster, people are getting hurt.
First Avenue, I think, is really starting to get to a place where you could get a little bit more space there.
Kent Avenue is a victim of its own success, right? When that lane went in 2010, it was amazing. It was like the best thing ever. And it's just unbelievably heavily used right now.
The Prospect Park West bike lane, widen that and make it accessible all around the park to ease some of the congestion inside the park.
Good morning, we're here for the 10th anniversary of Bike to Work Day with Streets Back. We have a number of members of the City Council's Progressive Caucus and Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus.
You know, riding on the Brooklyn Bridge, riding along Kent Avenue, certainly you can feel congested with the amount of bike traffic that we have. And as we see more mopeds and other types of micro-mobility forms of transit, it is important for us to think about how do we ensure that there's enough space on our roadways to really meet the needs of riders.
Our city must look at this as a positive trend for how we reduce our carbon footprint and how we make the city one that is rooted in pedestrians, cyclists, and its people over cars and trucks. And so New York City should be leading those efforts.
So Streetfilms has been doing many traffic counts over the past few years all over New York City, but especially on 1st and 2nd Avenues, showing large numbers of users packing the bike lanes. At rush hour, it can get very crowded. In fact, in a recent count on 2nd Avenue, we showed 321 users in the bike lane versus 535 vehicles in the other 3 lanes combined. Now those numbers are pretty much verified by this latest New York City DOT tweet where they produced some data on a 1-hour traffic count on 1st Avenue showing 750 bike lane users versus 1,100 motor vehicles. Now again, those 1,100 vehicles have 3 lanes to move in. Mathematics says this scale is way off balance.
So we selected 2nd Avenue because of the high and still growing demand to create a photo sim that we could redesign the space and better allocate it to not just cyclists, but people who are using other wheeled modes of travel. So obviously scooters, the hoverboards, wheelchairs, etc. There's a lot of space that's allocated to people driving private vehicles. There's a bus lane, which is good, but then there's a very narrow bike lane given the demand. So we looked at precedents like Rue de Rivoli in Paris and others on how we could create a much wider, more comfortable way for people to be riding around the city.
I heard there were almost 900,000 people on city bikes last week, which is extraordinary. We've had people take 180 million rides on 26,000 bikes. So you can just imagine what that's going to be like when we have 40,000 bikes in New York City.
Bike lanes, as they're designed, are often designed in a moment of time where they're as much as you can get on the street. And over time, things change, and as bike lanes become busier and more crowded, we need to make adjustments to understand how the users are using that space and how to understand the priorities on that street are going to continue to shift, and more space may be needed to be assigned for that use.
There's not enough space in our bike lanes to ride with kids, to ride with packages, to ride at a slower pace when there's someone wanting to pass you. There's just not enough room.
The wider bike lanes would accommodate bike riders at different paces, all ages and abilities, and keep everyone safe too.
And I think it definitely merits further investigation. I think the more space that we're dedicating to safe cycling, the better.
It's to see the throngs of people, thousands of people that are going up and down these avenues every day. That's the goal. And it really is part of that, if you build it, they will come.